15 top engineers had tried, and all of them failed. But then, something unexpected happened. The one who saved the entire company wasn't a tech genius at all. It was the nanny, with her yellow gloves and a calm smile. Austin, Texas, 6 p.m. Inside the glass-walled conference room of Harper Motors, the white LED lights reflected off the tense faces of engineers who had stayed awake for countless nights. 15 people. 15 of the brightest minds, and 3 weeks without a solution. On the big screen, lines of code flashed like a discordant symphony. System error. Integration failed. No one said a word. Only the clattering of keyboards and the faint sound of tired sighs filled the room. The air was so heavy that everyone could feel their own heartbeat. Alex Harper, 36, founder and CEO, stood silently behind the glass, fingers tightening around his pen. He had once been a brilliant engineer, the man who turned the dream of self-driving electric cars into reality. But now, he was watching helplessly as his creation, his life's work, fell apart before his eyes. One engineer finally spoke up. "We've checked everything. Protocols, memory, firewalls, all fine. Nothing's wrong." Dr. Marcus Lee, the head of software, frowned. "That's impossible. Run diagnostics again. There's something we're not seeing." The team bent over their laptops once more, repeating the same routine like a desperate ritual. Alex glanced at his watch. 6:02 p.m. By now, he should have been sitting at the dinner table with Sophie, his 6-year-old daughter. Instead, all he could see was her face on his phone wallpaper. That innocent smile, messy hair, and the tiny apron smeared with cookie dough. His assistant approached quietly. "Sir, should I let the nanny know you'll be home late again?" Alex paused for a few seconds. Then he shook his head. "No. Tell her to bring Sophie here. I promised her we'd have dinner together. And I don't break promises. Not even in a storm." He didn't say that to sound noble. He said it because he knew, ever since his wife passed away 2 years ago, those small promises to Sophie were the only thread keeping him tied to this life. No one in the room said anything. A CEO in crisis talking about dinner with his daughter. It sounded out of place. Yet it somehow softened the cold tension in the air. Marcus looked at him, then gave a slight nod. They all understood. No matter the pressure, Alex Harper was still a man who never forgot he was a father first, and a leader second. 20 minutes later, the conference room door creaked open. A sliver of warm yellow light from the hallway spilled across the glass floor. A figure stepped in, utterly different from the high-tech world around her. Emma Brooks, 29, Sophie's nanny. Simple white shirt, yellow rubber gloves still on, hair tied back neatly, eyes gentle yet alert. She looked as if she'd just stepped out of a cozy kitchen, not into a room where millions of dollars hung in the balance. Behind her, Sophie ran in, bringing with her a burst of life. "Daddy, we made cookies! The ones with extra chocolate chips!" Alex bent down, scooping his daughter into his arms, the first genuine smile of the entire day spreading across his face. "That sounds perfect, sweetheart. Just give Daddy a few more minutes, okay?" And in that instant, all the tension seemed to melt away. Even the engineers, stiff and exhausted, couldn't help but smile. But one person stood quietly, watching. Emma. She set down Sophie's backpack, her gaze drifting toward the big monitor filled with chaotic lines of code. The reflection of that flickering screen danced in her eyes, focused, thoughtful, as if she recognized something familiar. And in that seemingly ordinary moment, something extraordinary was about to happen. No one noticed her at first. Amid the bright white screens and the cold mechanical voices, Emma Brooks looked like a gentle note in the noisy symphony of technology. She stood quietly near the door, still holding Sophie's small pink backpack, her eyes wandering across the modern, sterile room. But only a few seconds later, her gaze stopped. She looked up at the giant screen, where hundreds of lines of code were running. A faint furrow crossed her brow, subtle, instinctive. No one noticed. But Alex Harper did. He saw the change in her eyes, from polite curiosity to focus, then to something analytical, calculating. As a CEO, he was used to reading people's expressions, and in those eyes, he saw something the entire room had long lost: curiosity. She spoke softly, but clearly. "Mr. Harper, may I ask, what are you all trying to fix?" That simple question made the whole room pause for a beat. Marcus Lee looked up, a half-smile forming on his tired face. "We're trying to debug the autonomous driving system. It crashes every time it connects to the central network. Pretty complicated stuff. Hard to explain to someone not familiar with tech." A few engineers chuckled, not out of malice, but clearly amused. Who asks about AI programming while still wearing dishwashing gloves? Emma nodded, eyes still on the screen. She was silent for a few seconds, then said softly, almost like a whisper, "I see. But if you let me take a look, maybe I could spot something." The room went utterly still. That sentence, which sounded like casual curiosity, dropped like a pebble into a lake swollen with pride. A young engineer snorted lightly. "Sure. If you want to look, just be careful, it might give you a headache." Marcus smirked too and turned back to his keyboard. But Alex didn't smile. He didn't know why, but something in him said, "Let her try." "All right," he said, his tone calm but firm enough to make everyone stop. "Let her take a look. Everyone, step back a little." The atmosphere in the room shifted. Emma walked closer, gently placing Sophie's backpack on the table. She removed her yellow gloves and set them beside the sleek black keyboard. Those hands, small, slender, yet steady, rested on the keys as if they'd done this 1,000 times before. Every eye in the room fixed on her. For the first 30 seconds, she said nothing, just looked. The glow of the monitor reflected in her gray-blue eyes, each line of code passing by like words from a story she had once lived. Then suddenly, her fingers began to move, fast, precise, decisive, not fumbling like an outsider, but confident, as though she could hear a melody and knew exactly which note was wrong. Marcus leaned forward, frowning slightly. "What are you doing?" Emma didn't answer. Her fingers kept rushing across dozens of code segments before stopping at a specific spot. "Here," she said quietly. "You've got a memory allocation conflict in the handshake protocol. The autonomous system and the central network are both trying to access the same memory block." Several engineers glanced at each other. Marcus immediately objected. "That's impossible. We've checked that section 100 times. The memory addresses are completely separated." Emma smiled gently, her voice soft but steady. "Separated when static, but not when dynamic. During memory expansion, the autonomous system's buffer overflows, and that's when it collides with the security firewall." Her fingers flew across the keyboard again, so fast they blurred. She created a small gap between the two systems. "Try it now." Marcus looked at Alex. Alex gave a single nod. The program launched. Everyone held their breath. 1 second. 2 seconds. Then the screen flashed green, displaying the line the whole team had been dreaming of for 3 long weeks. Integration successful. No one spoke. Marcus stammered, "That's impossible. We've been over that section 100 times." Emma smiled, softly, like someone who had just solved a child's riddle. Sometimes we get so busy searching for errors in the complex things that we forget to look at the simplest ones. I made that mistake once, and I learned. Clarity always beats intelligence. The room stayed silent. 15 engineers, one CEO, and one woman who had been seen as an outsider, all stood there, stunned by what they had just witnessed. Alex looked at her, eyes filled with both astonishment and admiration. A woman in yellow gloves had just saved his entire company. In 30 seconds. The room remained eerily silent. Only the faint hum of computer fans, the soft patter of rain against the glass, and the glow of the blue screen reflected on everyone's faces. They had just witnessed the impossible. A woman, an ordinary one in their eyes, not part of the engineering team, had just resolved the issue that had been trapping them for 3 long weeks. Marcus Lee was the first to break the silence. He stepped closer, looked at the screen, then turned to Emma. What did you just do? How did you even know that part was the problem?" Emma took a small step back, a bit uneasy under the weight of so many eyes on her. She removed her yellow gloves, placed them on the table, and spoke softly. "I just recognized a familiar pattern. Something about the way the systems fought over memory space. It felt like an error I'd seen before." Marcus frowned, but Alex Harper asked, his tone slow, curious rather than skeptical. "You said seen before. You mean you've worked in system programming?" Emma smiled faintly, a smile with a touch of shyness, sadness, and nostalgia all at once. "Yes, I used to be a software engineer before I became a nanny." The room froze. Every engineer standing around the table straightened up, stunned. A few exchanged glances, some embarrassed. Marcus blinked in disbelief. "Wait, where did you work before?" Emma took a deep breath. Her voice was low but steady. "I was the lead developer on the Astra Drive project in San Francisco." Marcus stared at her, almost speechless. "You mean Astra Drive? The self-driving car project that Silicon Valley once called the future of the industry?" Emma nodded. "Yes, that one. We truly believed we would change the way the world moves. But then the company lost funding, and the project was shut down. When Astra Drive collapsed, we were all branded as liabilities. No one wanted to hire someone from a failed project." A long silence filled the room. Alex looked at her carefully, as if he was seeing someone he thought he knew but had never truly understood. "So you were a lead programmer?" "Yes." "And now you're a nanny for my daughter?" Emma gave a soft laugh, gentle but carrying something that made the whole room fall quiet again. "I do this job because I need to live, and because I needed peace. Sophie helps me remember. There are things more important than perfect lines of code." No one spoke. The engineers, once so confident in their talent, now lowered their heads, humbled by a woman so modest yet profoundly wise. She looked back at the screen and continued, her voice calm but firm. "I have a master's degree in computer science and 5 years of experience in autonomous systems programming. But I also have a 6-year-old girl who believes I make the best cookies in the world. And maybe both of those things are equally a part of who I am. A few light chuckles broke the silence, not mocking ones, but filled with admiration. The room that had once felt cold and tense now seemed strangely warm. Alex looked at her, his eyes completely changed. No longer those of a CEO assessing an employee, but of a man recognizing a rare, invaluable soul. He spoke quietly, slowly, his voice carrying genuine gratitude. Thank you, Emma. Not just for saving my company, but for reminding me that sometimes the most incredible talent isn't found in a resume, but in the heart of someone who never stops observing, never stops believing. Emma smiled, her eyes glistening. Mr. Harper, I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just saw what everyone else was too busy to see. The blue light from the screen reflected off her bare hands, hands that once wrote powerful lines of code, now more familiar with wiping tables, washing dishes, and baking cookies for a little girl. And yet, those very hands had just saved an entire company from collapse. In that moment, everyone understood. No one is ever truly ordinary. Sometimes we just don't look deep enough to see their true worth. The conference room gradually fell silent again. On the screen, the words, "Integration successful," still glowed, like a symbol of the miracle that had just happened. But for Alex Harper, the real miracle stood right in front of him. The simple woman in a white blouse, who had just taken off her yellow gloves, her eyes shining brighter than any screen in the room. He looked at Emma for a long moment, then said quietly, "Emma, do you realize what you just did?" She smiled softly, her eyes still a little red from the tension of the last few minutes. "I just did what I know. Nothing special." "No," Alex said. "You didn't just fix a bug. You saved the project. You saved hundreds of people from losing their jobs. You saved the dream I've spent half my life chasing." The engineers standing around said nothing. They all knew. If not for Emma, the company might not even have a reason to exist by tomorrow morning. Alex took a step closer, his voice lowering. "I have to ask, why would someone who once led the Astra Drive project choose to be my daughter's nanny?" Emma looked at him, her eyes deep, as if holding a story she'd never told. "Because after Astra Drive, I lost everything. My career, my reputation, my faith. People only saw the failure. They never saw the nights we worked ourselves to exhaustion because we truly believed AI could save lives, not harm them. When the company collapsed, I left the industry. I didn't want to touch a keyboard again. I wanted to slow down, to be near something real. And then I met Sophie. She smiled gently. That little girl reminded me that some things matter more than algorithms. She taught me patience. She taught me to laugh at failure. She taught me that no matter how cold the world becomes, there's always a place for kindness. Alex stood still, not just moved, but deeply respectful. A kind of respect not born from credentials, but from the quiet dignity of the person standing before him. He spoke slowly, his voice low and sincere. "Emma, I want to ask you to come back." She looked up, surprised. "Come back? To programming?" Not just that. He drew in a deep breath, meeting her gaze. I want you to lead the Autonomous Systems Division at Harper Motors as head of automation systems. I want people like you, humble, kind, but able to see what others can't, to lead us forward. Emma was silent. Part of her was moved. Another part was afraid. Thank you, but I can't. Sophie needs stability. She's already lost her mother. I don't want to leave this role. I don't want her to lose another person. The room went silent again. Alex looked at her, his eyes softening. Who said you'd have to leave that role? Emma blinked, surprised. He continued, his tone warm but firm. If you agree, I'll make sure you can work flexibly. You'll lead the engineering team on your own schedule, work from home, and have complete control of your hours. And when Sophie gets out of school, you'll still be the one picking her up. I don't just want a brilliant engineer. I want Sophie to have someone she trusts. A quiet pause. Then Emma let out a small laugh, tears streaming down her cheeks. You're telling me I can be both an engineer and a nanny? No, Alex replied softly but firmly. I'm telling you that you already are both. Because you've always been someone who takes care of what you create, whether it's a child or a dream. That line made everyone in the room exhale softly. And for the first time in 3 weeks, they felt something they hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not just for the project, but for how they saw people. Emma wiped her tears, nodded slowly, and said quietly, All right, I'll try. Alex smiled. No, Emma, you don't need to try. Just keep doing what you've always done, seeing what everyone else overlooks. That day inside the once cold conference room of Harper Motors, a seemingly small decision changed everything. It didn't just redefine the company's future. It redefined what true success meant, not measured by titles or profits, but by the ability to trust, to care, and to see the worth in others. 6 months later, Austin, Texas, a bright March morning. Sunlight streamed through the glass facade of Harper Motors headquarters, casting golden reflections onto the new laboratory sign that read, The Emma Brooks Innovation Lab. Inside, young engineers worked with quiet focus. On the wall, words etched in shining steel read, Innovation begins with empathy. E. Brooks. Since that day, Harper Motors has undergone significant changes. It was no longer just a pioneer in autonomous vehicle technology. It had become a symbol of human-centered innovation, a company where every idea, whether from an engineer or a nanny, was heard. Emma was now head of autonomous systems, but her office wasn't on the executive floor. It was right next to Sophie's playroom, a whiteboard filled with complex programming formulas beside the colorful doodles of a child. Amid toy cars and electric vehicle models, 2 worlds, technology and tenderness, coexisted in perfect harmony. When journalists came to interview them, they asked Alex Harper what the secret to his company's success was. He simply smiled, glancing toward Emma and Sophie sitting on the floor together, as Emma gently taught the little girl how to assemble a mini electric circuit. Then he said, The person who saved this company wasn't a programming genius. It was someone who knew how to listen. Someone who didn't let bias overshadow compassion. The newspapers called Harper Motors' turnaround a revolutionary breakthrough. But what no one knew was that every time Alex read those headlines, he smiled quietly to himself. Because to him, the real revolution didn't happen in the lab. It happened in the way people began to see one another. That evening, as the sun dipped westward, Emma and Sophie walked hand in hand out of the building. Sophie looked up and asked, "Mommy, Emma, can we bake car-shaped cookies tonight?" Emma laughed. "Of course we can. But you'll have to help me measure the flour and sugar precisely, okay? That's science." "Like robots?" the little girl asked. "Yes, like robots. Except robots don't know how to add love. Only you do." The child giggled, her tiny hand gripping tightly the woman's. A woman who had once been a programmer, then a nanny, and now was known across the company by two words spoken with deep respect. Chief Brooks. That night, as the office lights dimmed, Alex sat alone, gazing out over the city skyline. He thought of everything that had happened, the failures, the miracle, and the lesson taught to him by a woman once thought ordinary. Sometimes, the most advanced form of technology is the ability to understand a human heart. He looked down at his desk, where a single yellow glove sat encased in glass. Beneath it, a small metal plaque read, "To Emma Brooks, who taught us that brilliance often wears yellow gloves." And beneath that, engraved in fine letters, "In a world obsessed with titles and credentials, remember, sometimes the smartest person is the one who pauses to care. Intelligence can build a company, but kindness builds humanity." Thank you for listening to today's story. If you believe that kindness and understanding still have a place in the modern world, share this story and help spread that light. Don't forget to leave your thoughts below and subscribe to Deep Life Tales, where we continue our journey to find true stories of humanity, where people shine not because they are perfect, but because they choose to love.